Hey, I hope everybody's doing great out there. This is Chris Ackerson, the Tennessee State Director for Every Man a Warrior. And it is hard to believe, but it has been just over a year since I started in this new position. And we think that means it's time for an update. And this is really precipitated, was begun by a friend of mine named Phil Downer, who is the president and founder of the Discipleship Network of America, who loved what we were doing so much. He asked if we could host a meeting at his great backyard that you can see in the picture here, which we did last week, and we had current donors, we had men and their wives, guys who had already finished Every Man a Warrior and maybe were already leading groups. And we had just some friends who wanted to come and hear what this was all about. But for those of y'all that didn't get to come, I've already had some of you asking, well, what did you talk about? What was the update that you gave at this dinner? And so I'm going to, in pretty quick fashion, give you a rundown on the things that we talked about where we are in the ministry after 1 year. So as a lot of you know, the first assignment when coming on a position like this is to raise the financial support team and the prayer support team that's needed to be able to execute this ministry. And that's an important thing with Every Man a Warrior, because this is one of the things that the organization values, is that the staff is fully funded. So for us, that was an important part of joining this team, is to be committed to get all the funding in place to be able to effectively do the work. And I'm excited to tell you that we're at 56% of our funding right now, and that after a pretty hectic year where Lonnie, the boss, got cancer and had to deal with that. Our headquarters in Cary, North Carolina at Trans World Radio had a fire that they've had to deal with. And of course, we were finishing up the rebuilding of our home after our fire from about a year and a half ago. And so we've gotten through all that, and God has really blessed us to already be at 56% of our funding, but now it's time to move forward and get the rest of that 44% done. And so we are, we're already blessed for you guys that are watching this, that are on our support team. Thank you so much for being a part of that. We are really excited to have you be a part of the work God's doing through Every Man a Warrior. And I hope you'll continue that, and hope you'll help us as we look for more folks to join the team. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. But first, let's talk about what the opportunities are that we're seeing for ministry in the next year, 2, 3 years here in the state of Tennessee. Of course, in Chattanooga and in Northwest Georgia, where we've been working already, we've got over 400 guys and growing that are a part of the Every Man a Warrior movement. We've been learning really valuable lessons. We've been sharpening our skills. One of our verses from Ecclesiastes 10:10 says, if the axe is dull and its edge unsharpened, more strength is needed, but skill will bring success. And that's certainly one of the things we're teaching in Every Man a Warrior, but we're also learning that as an organization, and how we're going to take the things we've learned here in Chattanooga and move on to places like Knoxville. Knoxville's my hometown, so I've got a lot of connections there. I've been reconnecting with the church I grew up in. But most of the growth we're seeing there, we've got about 80 guys, probably more than that now, maybe even pushing 100 guys in Every Man a Warrior in Knoxville. And a lot of that's been spearheaded by a couple of guys who work for other national disciple-making ministries. And these guys have found Every Man a Warrior not only to be a fantastic tool for their personal disciple-making, but they found it to be a tool that makes their own ministries better. In fact, one of these guys on a couple different missions trips in the last year took Every Man a Warrior to the country of Uganda and helped train and start 4 groups of pastors in the Every Man a Warrior training, and has probably found a guy who will provide translation services for us into the primary Ugandan language. So that is pretty cool, that the work we're doing in Tennessee doesn't mean God's going to keep it in Tennessee. He's already showing us that this can be one of the ways that Every Man a Warrior begins to reach the world. Now, we also got the Tri-Cities. If we keep moving northeast into the state, we've got some great connections there already, primarily because of the Iron Sharpens Iron conference that we've been a part of, me personally for several years, and Every Man a Warrior for about 3 years now. And so we want to build on those relationships. We've got an added incentive in our family because our youngest son is going to school at ETSU. So we'll look for any good reason to get up and have a chance to grow men in that area and take a chance to see our son. Now, Nashville, the biggest city in the state, of course, that's a place we want to be at work, but I wasn't sure exactly how we were going to connect there. Well, this past month, I was sent to speak at a men's retreat that was not a church men's retreat. It was actually a group of men who were connected through their businesses. And I was able to go there and teach on the building blocks of discipleship, which was a great opportunity for me. But what was most exciting was to see these guys who had already connected with Every Man a Warrior. Lonnie had been there the year before and helped get some guys started. Well, it turned out to be dozens of guys that had gone through Every Man a Warrior all over the country. We saw one group of those guys, the entire Every Man a Warrior group got baptized while we were at this retreat. It was really exciting. But what was great for me in this position in Tennessee is the core group of leaders for this retreat are all guys from the Nashville area. So God is already answering those prayers for how are we going to connect in Nashville and giving us a great foothold to get started. And if we keep moving northwest from Nashville, we get to Clarksville. Similar to the Tri-Cities, we've got connections there from the Iron Sharpens Iron Conference. And also similar to the Tri-Cities, I have a son who is in the Army and is stationed at Fort Campbell just outside of Clarksville. And so we're looking forward to the opportunities to get up there in the coming years to continue to plant seeds and to build into men in that area. Finally, if you don't already know, I like to wear a little bit of crimson during this time of year. I've got a lot of connections in the state of Alabama from going to school there, and somewhere in the future, I've really got my eye on probably Birmingham and Huntsville as cities where I would really like to plant some seeds, find some men, do some training there for guys in Every Man a Warrior. So as you can see, there is plenty of opportunity for us to do work, plenty of places where God has already been ahead of us, paving the way, and we just need to finish this funding so that we can really get focused on the work in those places. So as always, when we make plans, here's one of our Every Man a Warrior verses again from Proverbs 16:9, that a man's mind plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps. And so all of this, even as I lay out maps and thinking of how we're going to go at this ministry, we always want to stay aware of how God is directing along the way, that it won't always be our plan. He may have some different things going on. And so we will prayerfully stay aware of that the whole way through. So, okay, so what's next when we see all this going on? What are next steps for me, for you guys? And the first one, which should always be the case, is to continue praying for the ministry. And so I would really ask that you guys make this a regular part of your prayers for how God is working in the lives of men across the state. I got an important lesson over the last several months about the power of prayer for me personally when I needed a new vehicle. Some of you guys have heard this story, but instead of rushing out to buy a vehicle, I was encouraged to spend time praying about it. And after 3 months and still needing a vehicle, I was about ready to jump out ahead of God, and I was encouraged once again to pray. And wouldn't you know it, God provided a van in a way that only He could. It was through one of our churches in North Georgia that is very engaged in Every Man a Warrior, and I've now got a great vehicle to drive around the state. There is still some fundraising around that vehicle that you could be involved in. We raised 6 of the 10,000 that we needed for that van, and we've got till the end of the year to raise the rest, that final 4,000. We'd love you to consider being a part of that. But primarily, this next step is about praying for the ministry. Now, for those of y'all in particular that are already a part of the financial support team, I really hope you will prayerfully plan to continue in that giving. If God's blessed you in this past year, the economy's been good, and maybe you're able to make an increase in what you give, we would be blessed by that. Maybe even consider already thinking in your head about this not being a year-by-year commitment, but maybe a 2, 3, 4-year commitment. And if you'll let me know if that's something you feel like God's calling you to, this is not a 1-year ministry for us. This is a 20-year plan. And so we want you to be a part of that. And then finally, as we're in this push to complete the funding, would you consider doing kind of what my friend Phil did? Consider maybe gathering some folks at your house or at your church or out at a restaurant, whatever works best for you. It doesn't have to be a big deal. But maybe these are the guys that are in your Every Man a Warrior group. Maybe this is a small group from church or just some couples in the neighborhood that you know. It would be great for me to be able to come and just share the vision. I'm a low pressure guy on this. God will move as He will, but it's important that we share what God's up to and what it'll take to carry out this calling. So guys, we really appreciate how you are being a part of this with us. We thank you and look forward to talking to you again soon. I'll be contacting a lot of people in the coming months, and maybe we'll get a chance to sit down together and really talk more in detail about this vision. So thanks for taking a little bit to let me catch you up after a year, and God bless.